All right, thank you so much for being here today. We really appreciate you coming out for our Why Vote webinar. We have some special guests with us today. My name is Stefan Kodur. I am the SSCCC Engagement and Development Coordinator. We have some other SSCCC staff that's going to introduce themselves later. We also have with us today Calbright College and Sierra College. Going to be going over some of their strategies for what they've been doing as far as voter education and voter registration on their campus. Even featuring today the Student Vote Project out of the California Secretary of State's office. They're going to go through some of the requirements of the bills. AB 963, what are some of the impacts that it's going to have on you, the campus, and some great strategies moving forward and some resources for each and every one of you. So I'm going to just hop right in and go over a few things. So let me pull up my slides and share screen. Awesome. Thumbs up if everyone can see my screen. Perfect. So just before we start, you can choose presenter view. It's an easier way for you to get the viewing experience. There are some slides today. The California Secretary of State's office has some slides for you. Also, there's a couple slides that are going to be available for you at the end. Live transcript is at the bottom of your screen. If you'd like to see it, this webinar is recorded, will be posted to the SSCCC YouTube channel afterwards. Right now, participants, you are muted. There will be a time for you to speak at the end. The chat is being monitored by our staff. So if you do have questions as we go along, please just put it in the chat. We can monitor that or save it to the end, and we'll have a time for open dialogue and sharing at the end. So as far as that goes, we want to get through the agenda. We're going to go through some Why Vote and some things on the legislative resources that we have, or some of the resources that we have in the legislation that we've been going through. The SOS Student Vote Project is going to go over AB 963 and the requirements and some of the resources that are going to be available for you after this. And then Calbright and Sierra College are going to go through their in-person and virtual events. So I want to just hop right in. You all are here because of either you're a civic and voter empowerment coordinator, what we call in the system CVEX, or you're maybe an advisor that works with the student government, or just working on voter education and voter registration in general. So you're here to make sure that you are, promoting to students voter education, voter registration, really that civic engagement piece on your campus. We want to make sure that students know that when they have an empowered voice, there is change that they can make, right? There is that impact on policies. There's that impact on legislation, but from the legislators that they vote into office and all of these different things. So I want to go over, really why it's so important for our students to get involved. We over the past couple of years, we have seen an increase in student voters, which is great, because we need our students to really, take up that mantle and begin that process. We need them to, start promoting that change. We need our students to raise their voices. At the SSCCC, we are constantly trying to get students to share their story, to really impact legislation. So, once we get our students, seeing what their impact is, that's when we can really start making change within our system and within our state. So I wanted to go over, I'm going to kick it over to my fellow staff member, Stephanie Goldman, who is our associate director. She's going to go through a little bit of the impact of the importance of student voting.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for coming to this. This is such an important topic. Students are incredibly powerful. When we're talking about community college students, we're talking about 1.9 million people in the state of California. I think sometimes in California, people just assume everything's going to go left. We're going to always have the supermajority in the state. We're always going to go Democrat when it comes to federal. But that's not always the case, right? In our lifetimes, we have had Republican governors. We have had folks who aren't necessarily as student-centered as we'd like to see. In the last couple of years, we've been incredibly lucky to have really student-centered legislators in the state, as well as some student-centered trustees at your local boards. And the way we get those people in those positions is by voting. So I want to start, we always want to look at this at a local level, right? Because so many of our trustees will go on to become our legislators and they will be making laws. For example, Assembly Member Mike Fong, he used to be a trustee. So it's important that you engage and you get students to engage in those local level elections. Now, the Student Senate of California Community Colleges has been incredibly successful as far as bills and working with partners organizations go. Our successes include getting advisory voting rights to student trustees, mental health support. We were a huge part of the team that got Cal Grant Reform passed, and now we're a huge part of the coalition that is trying to ensure it's actually implemented. But we can't do that unless we get community college friendly folks in the legislature, in the governor's office. And that can't happen unless our students are actually voting and making their voices heard. It's easy to look at these successes and say, hey, we've done a great job, because we have. But we also should consider the efforts that have failed in the past that maybe wouldn't have failed if we had more student voters. If we look at 2020, for example, there were two incredibly important propositions that both failed that could have been incredibly beneficial to our colleges. One was Proposition 13, not that Proposition 13, but Proposition 13 that would have actually allowed the government to issue $15 billion in school bonds to fund the community colleges, K-12 schools, and university facility bonds. In addition to that, that one would have also allowed more local bonds. So that would have really helped improve some of and update many of our facilities. It failed. It failed in 2020, and there are a lot of reasons it failed. One being Proposition 13 is never helpful in California. But two, we had to look at who's actually out there voting. That could have had a tremendous impact, and it didn't. The other one that failed was Proposition 16, and that would have allowed diversity as a factor in public employment, education, and contracting hiring decisions. Schools are struggling hard to diversify faculty. That's an ongoing problem. We just had another report that came out saying that we just don't have the diversified faculty that we need. Proposition 16 could have helped with that. So we need to know that our students are getting out there and they are voting for these priority issues, because if they're not getting out there, these issues can and will fail. So I want to encourage all of you advisors, like, get out there, try to get the votes out. It's a matter of getting folks to vote in those local elections, because those will often dictate our bigger statewide elections. Voting in the statewide elections, of course, because we want those community college friendly, not just friendly, but knowledgeable legislators. I've had to explain what Cal Grant is to legislators, and that's a tough one. I mean, that's a major priority for our students, and that Cal Grant reform is going to make a tremendous difference in their lives. But having to go back to the drawing board to really teach some of these folks what these things are, it can slow down the process of making real change in the state. So the impact our students have when they actually get out there and vote, I mean, we're talking big numbers. So let's use that power, yet let's utilize it as much as we can. And let's keep getting these incredibly powerful bills passed and these incredibly powerful champions in the legislature. In addition to voting, I just want to make a quick plug. Another way your students can be powerful and have a major impact is by joining us on our lobby day on March 7th, and also our March in March, which we're doing alongside faculty on that same day. So please let me know if you have any questions, reach out. Advocacy is kind of my game, and I'm here as a resource to all of you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Stephanie, for chiming in there. Yes, this is our advocacy visits. We'll drop the PDF in the chat in just a little bit. Please, we're teaming up with some faculty and going to have that march that day. And if we could get some of your students out here, it would be a huge successful event. So we'll drop the flyer into the chat in just a second. Right now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pass it off to our Secretary of State's office, who's going to introduce themselves and get into some of the requirements of AB 963 and some of the resources that they have. So Kevin and Wendy, show's yours.
Thank you, Stefan. Would you mind allowing us to share our screen just before we get started? Yep. Thank you. Okay, there we go. So, hi everyone. Thank you so much for having us today. We're really excited to provide updates and resources about our programming, but also about the March 5th presidential primary election. As Stephanie mentioned, it is important to have student voices. So we're just here to give you that empowerment and those tools to be able to vote and also inform your student bodies of how to vote. So my name is Wendy Galvan, and I am one of the California Secretary of State Students Vote Project coordinators.
Hi, everyone. My name is Kevin, and I'm also one of the SVP coordinators here at our California Secretary of State.
You, Kevin. So as mentioned, we'll be covering information about our programming and also the March 5th primary election. So I'm going to go off to our first slide here. So a little bit overview about the program and what we do. So the California Student Vote Project was established to help register college students to vote and to become more civically engaged. We were established in 2016 by the California Secretary of State, Lieutenant Governor, a handful of nonprofits, and each of the higher education systems that are in the state. So the CSU, the CCCs, the UCs, and the independent colleges. And they came together and agreed that they wanted to encourage and uplift the student voice in our voting process and our democracy. And then in 2020, a law came out of the work that the Students Vote Project was already doing and made some of these agreements into state law. So that's when the Student Civic and Voter Empowerment Act kind of was born. And that is what we'll be covering a little bit more in our next presentation and how it relates to the community college system and how it can work to help empower students to vote this upcoming election. We also host and participate in events such as this one and others that we host as well. And one of the most significant events that we host is called the California University and College Ballot Bowl Competition. So it's a fun twist to civic engagement. And it's essentially campuses compete to register the most students to vote. And the overall champion gets bragging rights and a visit from the secretary. So it's all fun, and it's coming up this year as well. And we also create easy to understand voting resources, which is very important, designed to make it easier for the implementation of the SCIVA, or the Student Civic and Voter Empowerment Act, while keeping college students at the forefront of all of our resources. Okay, so just a reminder that we will be sharing the links and resources that we cover in our presentation in the post-event email. So no worries if you don't get it now. We will be sharing it after the event and after the email goes out. So I wanted to cover this implementation guide that Kevin and I created this past year. It really serves as a document that simplifies the requirements of the Student Civic and Voter Empowerment Act to empower you all to be able to make sure that this is happening on your campus as it is required by community colleges to implement this law. So I'll be giving a walkthrough of the 6 main components just to make sure that you all kind of get the idea and kind of have that checklist to make sure that you all are implementing this this law through this guide. So there are 6 main components. Let me zoom in a little bit more. So the first one is having a civic and voter empowerment coordinator. So this person essentially is a key piece of this legislation. They make sure that the law is implemented and on the ground civic engagement work is being done. It's not that the work goes onto them, but they're more so the coordinator point person. But they're welcome to work with more than one person, with students, to make sure that civic engagement becomes a part of the college culture. The component 2 is the Civic and Voter Empowerment Action Plan. And so this is the second most important piece, because it kind of takes the civic engagement work and organizes it so that you all have a plan moving forward. And so we did release, and we'll be covering that a little bit, but we did release a Civic and Voter Empowerment Action Plan guideline. So it helps to those who have not created an action plan, it helps to kind of get that toolkit and understand what is supposed to be in it, how it's helpful, what are event ideas. But essentially, this action plan revolves around your plan of civic engagement for the next 2 academic years. And there should be this year an action plan submitted to our office by October 1st of 2024. So we will be collecting action plans, and action plans are also a way to participate in the ballot bowl as a separate competition category, but it also is required by SCIVA. So we're kind of adding that fun twist to it by being considered for the ballot bowl. And in the action plan, there must be a minimum of 3 election outreach events each academic year. So the actual guidelines covers the action plan more. So I would encourage you to check that out. And it is on our website. And again, we'll be sending that in the post-event email. Component 3 are campus events. And so it kind of just builds off of the action plan. So in each academic year, SCIVA states that there must be at least 3 events each academic year. And at least 1 event must be within the final 30 days preceding a statewide election. So if my math is right, sometime between February 5th and March 5th, there needs to be an election. An event related to the election. And that is more strategic so that students have a month in advance, keeps it on the radar. So SCIVA was really, really built to kind of keep the election in mind, but also empower students to understand what it takes to vote. So that's why that clause is there. So that's an important thing. There needs to be 3 events, and 1 of them needs to be within that 30-day mark before an election. And then again, more details are in the actual action plan guidelines. And then we have component 4, campus-wide emails. So me and Kevin noticed that a lot of community college advisors and CVECs wear multiple hats. So we took the approach of like maybe last year, 2 years ago, to create our own sample email and kind of incorporate this checklist into that sample email that needs to go out every beginning of a semester or quarter, regardless of election year. So this email should be going, there should have been one that went out fall semester, one going out spring semester. So we will be sending a reminder that these emails need to go out, but these go out regardless of election year. But now that there is an election coming up, we definitely encourage that these go out as they need to, especially with the fall coming up and the primary being very close. And so we pre-wrote that for you all. And then there's an election-wide email that is more specific. And the only difference with this one is that it's more of a updated and detailed election email. So it gives students the link of the voter guide because there is an election coming up and that would be more relevant. It gives students the website of the vote.ca.gov because that would be more relevant. So this email would include everything up here and also down here. So it would be more detailed because there would be an election coming up and there would be things published on these websites. So that's things to note. And we also created a toolkit that Kevin will be going over that includes some of the sample language to make students prepared and have that information. So that is also prepackaged. And then component 5 is the campus academic calendar. And so the Students Vote Project created a calendar that includes all these dates for you all, and it's also available on our website. And we just ask that your part would be to publish this calendar on your website. So either talk to your webmaster, your IT team that can get these dates up on the website so students can see. And I know there's maybe some bureaucracy depending on what district you're in, but essentially we've seen campuses successfully upload these dates as part of their events page. The academic calendar, we see that it's something that's more, I guess, with academic dates, and that makes sense. So in practice, we've been encouraging campuses to use their events page as events coming up, or also just take the calendar and upload the actual dates if you have like a page dedicated to student voting. So that's another way to be able, the idea is just get this out and have students be able to access them on the website. So whatever that means for your campus, we definitely encourage you all to do that as soon as possible if you haven't already. And again, this is also on our website. And we'll be covering it a little bit on our next slide. And then the last component is campus social media. So this is a different way of engaging students. So we've engaged them through email, we've engaged them through the website, and now we're engaging them through social media platforms. So we know that a lot of campuses do have platforms now, like Instagram, Facebook, and Instagram tends to be the most popular for young people. So we've prepackaged graphics that share this information. So if you are planning to or want to participate in this, but don't have the tools to be able to create your own graphics, we create it for you. We package it in a toolkit that Kevin will be giving a walkthrough of. And so we really just need you all to make sure that it gets to students. So even students who may be on this call as well, if you don't see this on your campus and you want your campus to be more engaged, please email us and we'll make sure to be in touch with that campus to ensure that this information is getting out, because we can create it, but if it's not getting out, then it's almost as if we didn't create it. So definitely encourage you all to work with your comms team in your campus and schedule some posts and students and their pros at socials. So encouraging students to also help you out would be great. And then just a special note for special elections that we had the recall. We added that special elections don't count under SCIVA. So we're really just looking at general and so every 2 years, presidential, general, and midterms. So even though we encourage outreach to be done during special elections or like more local ones, it is not required by SCIVA. So that is it for our implementation guide. We really broke the law down and made it easy for everyone to understand. And a lot of the resources that we create prepackage a lot of the implementation of this law. So now I'll go back to our slide deck. So thank you for sitting with me through that. So just a quick recap of the 6 components. But the main takeaway is that we have dedicated these past 2 years to ensure that your campus has the knowledge and resources to successfully implement SCIVA. So we'll be going over some of those resources in the next slide. But before we get to that, I just want to highlight component 1, the civic, which is the most important piece of this legislation because they are the civic engagement lead or coordinator, and they act as the liaison of knowledge. So as a reminder, if there have been changes to your campus's civic, please, we ask that you use our civic form, which is on our website, to update your information. If you are not sure who your civic is, please email us and we'll help make that connection. And if you have not been assigned the role of a civic by your campus, we ask that you please do not fill out the form just to not get confused. But we do have a separate form if you want to fill out, if you want to stay updated with what we do and what we send out. We have a subscribe form, and that can also be found under the contact information page of our website. So just recapping those 6 components and some important information. And now we're moving on to our resources. So we just broke it down with current resources and the new ones. So with most of these resources, they help your campus fulfill the SCIVA, but anyone working on civic engagement can find these useful. So as mentioned, one of the SCIVA requirements for California community colleges is to post civic and election dates on their campus websites. And to help campuses fulfill this requirement, we have something called the calendar here. It's very small, but on our website it's bigger. So we encourage you to check that calendar out and just copy and paste those dates, upload the actual file. It's fine, whatever works for your campus. We just need this to be on the website. The dates are very close to the primary election, and there's more than enough time to prepare students for the general election. So that should be done as soon as possible, if not already. And then we also talked about the email that needs to go out with these dates and links for students to inform them of how they can register and learn how to vote and what's going to be on the ballot. And that sample email language is also in our resources page on our website. And then we have our primary election March 5th, just a quick reminder, and our 2024 general election is November 5th. So it's less than a month away, or a little bit over than a month away for the primary election. So I want to make sure that this is all on your guys' radar. And then our new resources. So we did just cover the SCIVA implementation guide in the previous slide, but we encourage you all to check it out on your own time and look through it more thoroughly. And if you have any questions, you can always schedule office hours with us, and we'll be covering more of that in later slides. And then for campuses that may need support in creating action plans or have never created an action plan before, or just want to make their action plan stronger, we have an action plan guideline, and which is shown here. And that action plan guideline outlines what your action plan should look like, what it should have, gives you sample event ideas, and so that's a great tool to start your action plan. It is required by SCIVA, and there is going to be one due this year, October 1st, 2024. So we use it to be able to see the civic engagement work on our campus, highlight it and report it to the legislature and on our website. And we also use it to see if we can support any events that are forthcoming that you may want us to attend, and so on. So they're very crucial, and they help your campus kind of have that blueprint and that plan to be able to be successful in your civic engagement events. And most recently, we published our SVP annual report for the year 2023. So we talked about our number of CVICs and what campuses that we have a CVIC for. In the appendix, we have the list and links to all the events that we hosted in that annual report last year, as well as resources that we created in that document. And we also plan to work on an annual report this year, where we will take part of the action plan submitted and use the events to be able to put it into our report and have, as mentioned, the state legislature view it, but also the public. So it is a great way to highlight what your campus is doing and to be able to get started on civic engagement work if you haven't already created an action plan before. We also created a presidential primary election toolkit, as mentioned, to help campuses share important election information with student bodies for this upcoming March 5th primary. And with that said, now I will hand it over to Kevin, who will go over the toolkit and other important updates.
All right, thank you for that, Wendy. Just give me 1 second to share. All right, are we able to see the Canvas slide? All right. So thank you for that, Wendy. So we're very close to releasing our 2024 Presidential Primary Outreach Toolkit. This toolkit contains 2 sample emails, social media graphics, and a make a plan to vote checklist. So we're going to be taking a quick sneak peek at what will be made available to you all in the coming weeks. So here is our Presidential Primary Outreach Toolkit. It begins with a description about our program, as well as the Student Civic and Voter Empowerment Act. And the first major item is one of the sample emails, which is our key election dates email. So we recommend distributing this email across campus no later than February 20th to ensure the email is still relevant. February 20th is also the last day to register to vote online or by mail. But because California offers same-day voter registration, you can conditionally register to vote in person at a county elections office or a polling location between February 21st and Tuesday, March 5th, which is Election Day. And then just below these important dates here is a link to our SVP website, which I recommend you all check out, as it contains all of our resources, and this is where this toolkit will be living fairly soon. And then moving on to our next sample email. This is our Get Out the Vote sample email. We recommend this email goes out before the March 5th election. And this email is designed to excite students about the upcoming election while providing them with information about early voting and other resources for informed voting. And then included on here is the unique voter registration link ending in !T=S. And this is where all college students should be registering to vote. So we're able to track your campus's voter registration numbers. So again, we ask that your campus gets this information to students before the March 5th election. And then after that, we have a series of 6 social media graphics that you're able to download. Each set of graphics depending on what social media platform you want to post on. So our first one is the National Voter Registration Day graphic, which is on September 17th of this year. And then also included on this graphic is that unique college student voter registration link. And then our second set of graphics are a reminder to let students know that the primary election is on March 5th, while also providing the link to early voting. And then our third graphic set is like a text message graphic that provides information about how California registered voters receive a voter information guide, and just a brief summary of what is in that guide. And then the fourth graphic set provides a reminder that February 20th is the last day to register to vote online or by mail ahead of the election. And it also includes that unique URL. And then the fifth graphic set, this will be great to send between February 21st and March 5th for those who missed the deadline to register to vote online or by mail, and giving students information about same-day voter registration. And then the last graphic encourages voting by mail to skip the line on election day. And then we also displays the California early voting link to see approved locations to drop off your ballot. And the last item as part of the toolkit is the Make a Plan to Vote checklist. And this provides some best practices to voting. So it includes updating your voter registration, choosing how you will vote, and identifying when and where you will vote. So this guide right here will essentially serve as a basic template with best practices to voting. So that's essentially the end of our toolkit. Again, this will be made available to you all in the coming weeks on our website, and we'll send out an email blast letting you know that this resource is now available. All right. So we also have some event announcements that we wanted to share with you all. So for those of you who may not know, we do host weekly office hours every Thursday from 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. And you can use this time however you'd like, whether that's understanding your role as a CVEC, or you need ideas to get students more involved, or whatever your questions might be. We're here to help. You can find that link to schedule an appointment with us on our Contact Us section of our SVP website. And this is where you'll be able to schedule that appointment through Google Meets. And the next item on here is our quarterly meetings. So we have an upcoming quarterly meeting on the 15th of this month. And we're going to be covering information about the upcoming primary election and share resources geared towards college students. And after that quarterly meeting, we plan to have another one in July, which will cover the general election and showcase updated resources for the Ballot Bowl competition. Speaking of the Ballot Bowl, there have been a couple of items that I wanted to clarify, as there's been some confusion around the competition. So the California University and College Ballot Bowl only happens during a general election, which means it only occurs during an even numbered year. So this year it begins on August 12th and it ends on November 5th, which is election day. And something that you may have also noticed is that we track college student voter registration throughout the year on our college student voter registration tracking website. However, that tracking is separate from the Ballot Bowl competition. Our program tracks college student voter registration each and every year. However, we also track the number of registrations your campus obtains during the Ballot Bowl competition dates. So hopefully you all now have a little bit better understanding of the competition, and we're really excited to have you all participate. And then also, speaking on participation, all accredited California colleges and universities are automatically enrolled in the Ballot Bowl competition. Also later this year, before the general election, we plan to have a California College Civic and Voter Empowerment Summit, where we'll have multiple guest speakers joining us from different perspectives, with an ultimate goal of getting students engaged and ready to vote in the general election. We're still in the process of ironing out the details for this event, but just wanted to flag you all that we plan to have this event occur later, possibly in October. So here is our quarterly meeting that I just mentioned. It's going to be happening on the 15th of this month from 12 p.m. to 1 p.m. You can all register through the QR code displayed on the screen. So I'll just leave this up for a moment and let you scan the code now if you'd like to register right now. So in this quarterly meeting, we're going to be discussing the primary election, along with frequently asked voter registration questions around the unique link and physical voter registration cards. We're also going to be covering some other resources, which include our California Civic and Election Dates sample email and our election dates calendar. So really hope to see you all there, and we really do value your attendance. All right, so that's all we have for you today. If you'd like to reach out to us, please email us at our CAF Students Vote email. And if you're currently not receiving our emails, feel free to subscribe to our email list, which you can do by scanning the QR code on the slide. And then as a reminder, all links mentioned and all resources mentioned will be sent to you in a post-event email. So now I'll just hand it back over to Stephen to see how we're doing on time and if we're able to answer any questions.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Kevin and Wendy. We appreciate you both for being here. And thank you so much for partnering with us every time during this year. We really appreciate the Student Vote Project. There are a couple questions, but I want to make sure that we have enough time for our college campuses to kind of share their strategies right now. So we're going to get into that first. But if you would like to look into the chat, there are some questions in there that we'll get to at the end. Just so everyone knows, the SSCCC also puts out a toolkit that is completely catered to the community colleges. It's based on the Student Vote Project. We use their resources, and we're going to send you all of their toolkits and our toolkits. We also send reminders on these dates to make sure that the colleges are reminded of the fact, hey, from February 5th to March 5th, you have to hold an event. Reminder, let's make sure that we're having this event during this time. We work with your student leaders. You're going to see your student leaders posting through their student government Instagrams, all of these different Instagram posts and things like that. So I would definitely encourage you to share them also. I did say drop your email in the chat, please, if you'd like to get signed up for the email list. But right now, what I want to do is I'm going to kick it over to our colleges. And as most of you know, during COVID, that really changed the way we approach student engagement, right? That changed the way that we had to kind of get out there and get our students involved. So we have a great treat for us today. We have Calbright College, our completely online college, who do have students and who do have to abide by AB 963. So how are they doing voter education and voter registration? So we have Donna Howard and Chris Perez that are here from Calbright College. So they're going to get into their virtual strategies. And then afterwards, we're going to go to Sierra College, where we have Juan Miguel Blanco, who is going to go through some of, what can we do as far as in-person events, our brick and mortar campuses, which are the other 115. So I'm going to kick it over to the three of them. So Donna, Chris, Juan, it shows yours. And please introduce yourself.
Hi, so my name is Donna Howard, and I am at Calbright College, and I suspect that a lot of you do not know anything about Calbright College. So Calbright College is California's 116th community college. We have students in 52 out of the 58 counties in California, and we are 100% virtual. So
I'll jump in next. Thank you, Donna. For those of you who do not know, I am Chris Perez, and I am the student engagement specialist, just like Donna at Calbright. And like Donna said, we are virtual, right? We are sort of learning the tide and what's changed since then. So hopefully what we can share is some strategies on how to look really on the virtual side, that virtual engagement to help you all as we all move forward into this year. Thank you.
Good morning, folks. My name is Juan Miguel Blanco. I am the faculty coordinator here at Sierra College, working directly with the associated students of Sierra College, clubs on campus, things like that. And I'm also responsible for civic engagement and voter empowerment on our campus. And I've been the coordinator officially for about a year.
So I don't think we have a plan here, guys. So do you want me to go first, or okay?
Go
You
for
guys are
Donna.
good. Okay. So I'm going to share my screen. So because our student body lives in 52 out of the 58 counties in California, we have a very unique opportunity to bring the idea of civic engagement to a wide range of students. Our students are also a very more specific demographic. You have to be 18 years old to attend Calbright. Most of our students are 25 and older. Most of them are working adults. Most of them have children, or they're a caregiver in some way. They work multiple jobs. So we do not ever ask our students to show up anywhere in person. So they come to an online college for a reason, and we respect that. So we did kind of a pilot program of a civic engagement and voter empowerment plan in the fall, just with our student leaders. So we could kind of get a gauge of where their knowledge was, where their interest was. And so then we're taking that into the spring. And so this spring, we are sending out the all call to all of our students, all 3,800 of them, that they are invited to be a part of our task force and to help us create this plan. And we do that in a very unique way. So I'm going to turn it over to Chris for a second to talk about how we utilize Slack.
Thank you, Donna. Yeah, so for those of you who don't know, we do utilize Slack as our main platform and really our connection with our students. So we really look at it as our virtual campus. So how we sort of break that down is when we do any work, with a specific title, in this case, for civic engagement, all we do is we just create a channel for it. And we put everybody that's in there, and that's where they have that communication. So similar to what you may have seen for like GroupMe, if you use Microsoft Teams, just a variety of platforms that have their own sort of unique chat feature. That's really what we do. So we really emphasize that. We put all the information there, and that is our way to communicate with each other. So as we're working in sort of different areas, we're able to update each other. And the other part too that we've added is we're actually using Asana as well, so that for all of us, we're able to keep track of, here are the due dates, here's what needs to be done, if there needs to be some communication. Because like Donna's saying, we have a wide variety of students who are spread out through California. So we really have to be conscious of all the students that we reach, all of their concerns, all of their barriers, and how can we be able to work around that, or at least simplify the process so that for students, all they need to do is just go into Slack, go into that channel, and they're able to stay connected with everything that's happening.
Thank you, Chris. So we are tasked with a pretty heavy lift, and that is how to identify our students' knowledge across the state of what civic engagement means and what that looks like in the online realm. So we've broken it down into the 4 categories: civic action, civic skills, civic duty, and social cohesion. And then working with our government relations department, we're creating a poll after we do our all call to then ask our students where the confusion is regarding voter rights, where the confusion is regarding how to cast a ballot, all of that. And then we're going to address each of those needs separately. Our government relations is also identifying where our highest density of students live. And then they'll be reaching out to those assembly person and asking them to become an online speaker for us. We're also planning on doing a panel of our students that were in our pilot program in the fall to talk about what they learned from student engagement and what that has meant in their lives. Like, for instance, we have a student who is a poll worker this year because of that. So thank you. And Juan, I'm passing it on to you.
Thank you so much. So at Sierra College, currently this year, we're at 54% students virtual or online, and the rest a combination of in-person and hybrid. So the same thing as Callbright, we have to make sure we cater to our students, both who are 100% virtual and who are some type of hybrid or in person. Our district is also in 2 different counties, so Nevada County and Placer County. So we have to make sure that the information we provide our student is accurate, depending on which county they belong to. And so we have gotten to where we're at, and it's taken us 4 years to get here. 4 years and 2 action plans. So it's been quite a journey, but luckily for us, we have a great community. We were able to work with the students in building and creating the action plan from the 2020 to 2022, and the new action plan that we're currently in, which is the 2022-2024 action plan. And so also a highlight for us is that one of our counties was a Voter Choice Act county and one was not. But as of this year, Placer County became a Voter Choice Act county, which has opened many doors for our relationships with those counties and connecting students to resources and services. So some of the highlights that we do here at Sierra College is that because Placer County became a Voter Choice Act county this past year, they're now hosting a 4-day vote center on our campus, Rockland campus. So it'll be a vote center versus a polling place as it was in the past. Placer County also installed an official ballot drop box on our campus. So students can drop off their ballots there, faculty, staff, administrators, the community. And we have a great relationship with the League of Women Voters. So the League of Women Voters of Placer County have been with us since the inception of civic engagement and voter empowerment. And so they help us with workshops virtually and in person, connect us to resources and services that we can share with our students. And then we are also part of the All In Democracy Challenge, which is a national organization. And so being part of the All In has helped us in many ways because the All In reviews our action plan. And so if you are part of the All In Democracy Challenge, you are able to submit your action plan. They have a group of reviewers, and then you get it back with changes that they deem appropriate. And so it's just important to note that it's a little bit different than California. But we do take their suggestions to heart. And so I'll be 100% honest with you on this one. Our first action plan received like a C-. And so we had to go back and kind of look at their suggestions and improve it. We submitted it the second time and we got a B+, and we were okay with the B+ at that time. And so again, their suggestions are great, and we were able to improve our action plans and make our goals SMARTY goals so that we were able to reach those goals as a work group and get the college at where it's at now. So some of the events that we've done in the past, in person is Pop to the Polls. And so that happens during National Voter Registration Day. And so Pop to the Polls, very simple. We gave out popcorn, popsicles, Pop-Tarts, played pop music, and got students registered. So again, the students created that idea, and we're sharing it with our sister colleges because why not? So why not have Pop to the Polls? Super easy, simple, and food attracts students. And then you're able to register them to vote. We've had other events, like I mentioned, the League of Women Voters, looking at the ballot and propositions. And so they do a really good job of being bipartisan. So like if you vote yes, it means this. If you vote no, it means this. This is how it impacts potentially your community, the college, or even the state. So it really helped comb through the difficult languages of propositions. And so it can be scary, for some students. And so also during the gubernatorial recall election, many students didn't know, even myself, I'll be honest, I didn't know what gubernatorial was. And so I'm like, baby Gerber, what is that? And so, but then I found out what gubernatorial meant. And so if I'm lost, I can only imagine my students being lost as well. So the League of Women Voters helped us with that. But most importantly for us, I think where the magic happens is that we have an amazing relationship with our marketing team and our political science department. And so without our political science department, I would be lost. So I'm always shoulder tapping our professors in the political science departments to be like, can you read this email? Does it make sense to you? What are we missing? Same thing with marketing. They kind of comb through it and shape it in a way that students are going to click on it and continue to read it. And then with marketing, putting all the dates and information on the website, on our event calendar, things like that. So for those on the call, I highly recommend scheduling a meeting with whoever's responsible, whoever's your coordinator, scheduling a meeting with your marketing team, maybe your political science departments, if you have one, and getting those folks involved. Because part of AB 963 is getting not only students involved with the work, but also faculty, staff, and administrators. So that's kind of Sierra College in a nutshell. Again, it took us 4 years to get here. But I think one more highlight that I wanted to mention is our student ambassadors. So we were able to hire student ambassadors or civic engagement and voter empowerment student ambassadors, and it's work study funded. And so there was a Dear Colleague letter that came out from, let me see if I got this right. I don't want to lie to you all, by the Department of Education, where it basically states that we can use work study funding to hire students to do this work. And so that's the only caveat, is that the student has to be work study eligible to apply. And so our application well, actually today's, February 1st. Our application is now available for students to apply. We're planning to hire 2 to 3 students and see how it goes. And, of course, once their work study runs out, unfortunately, we can't continue with them, but we're planning to have them work about 6 to 4 hours a week, having voter registration booths out there, creating events, doing classroom presentations about the upcoming election. Questions?
Thank you so much, Juan, Chris, and Donna. Thank you for sharing, your strategies on your campus, and even in your virtual campus. I love some of the ideas, the panel of students that, how voting has impacted them, using, work study to get student workers to, be able to have that, those extra hands and having students, getting other students to register to vote. So those are all some great ideas. What I do want to do is open it up to questions. And I know there were a couple questions in the chat. And I think the first one is going to be for our Secretary of State's office. So Kevin and Wendy, I do want to ask, there was a question about the action plans and when are they actually due, and what specifically, needs to go into that.
Yes, great question. So action plans, so in the Student Civic and Voter Empowerment Act, or also known as AB 963, it said that the first round of action plans were due December 1st. And then thereafter, it would be dependent on the need to update the plan. So with that model, in practice, we as implementators of this law, through the Student Vote Project and the SOS, we saw that many campuses did not submit action plans as frequently as they needed to be updated. So, and there was really no guidance in SCIVA that outlined action plans, that outlined their due dates, that outlined just even tools to be able to understand what an action plan is. So out of that confusion and kind of lack of information in the law, we created these guidelines that serve as kind of supporting the action plan part of the law to make it more in tune with what really is happening in real life. So with campuses being on the academic year, our action plan is a little bit different than, for example, All-Ins or other organizations that use action plans, because we cater it off of the California requirements of SCIVA. And so we found that October 1st, every 2 years, and it be on an academic cycle and forward thinking, was going to be a successful model for our California schools to create their action plan model off of. And so that's how it came out to be the October 1st deadline on every even numbered year, which is also on every statewide election year. And as mentioned, we have that information on our website, so we encourage you all to check it out. If you are working with All-In and do have previous action plans, that is completely fine. But under SCIVA, we do encourage the model of the action plan that we outline, which is also built off of the All-In one. They're not completely separate. We didn't want to create 2 completely different action plans, but we did. All-In's action plan was also created before SCIVA ever existed. So ours is more so of an updated version that is catered and fits most schools in California. So even All-In, we spoke with them and they mentioned that some of our ideas they would like to do, but because it's been a while since they actually updated their action plans, they would rather prefer to keep it. And because we were new, we wanted to kind of update that process and make it more suitable for campuses.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Wendy. And the action plan that is due this year is for 2 years from now, right? Like over the course of the next 2 years.
Yes, yeah. So the action plan now, it should be forward thinking because it is a plan, and a lot of the action plans that we were getting were either, some of them were one page, which I know, some people are busy, but they were literally just one page, and that's where we felt like, great, you submitted an action plan, but then the quality of it is also not as strong as it could be. So this guideline was designed to do just that, give you the ideas and support. And then it is supposed to encapsulate 2 academic years. So it is even based off of that, like, academic thinking for those of us in the college environment. So that's why it should go from fall of 2024 to summer or end of summer 2026. So it should have the general election coming up in there. It should have fall 2024 to the year 2025, and then 2026. I think there might be a primary somewhere in the spring of 2026. So it should incorporate, every action plan should have one general election and one primary for separate elections, and that's kind of the pattern that we thought that would work.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Wendy. There's one last question and then I'm going to close this out. But it is on the question of task forces. So I know, Donna, through Calbright, you said that you had a task force that you created and it had student leaders on it. And that's something the SSCCC has been promoting for the last couple of years. When the Student Vote Project came out and AB 963 came out, we were telling all of the colleges, hey, there should be students involved in this process. So can you give some words of encouragement, some things that you did to enable students to be able to be involved in civic engagement, the voter registration, and all of that?
Yeah, so we also have faculty and staff on our task force. So one of the areas of students or demographics of students that we reached out to were our undocumented students. So our undocumented students have a strong presence on our task force. A lot of them are curious about how democracy works in the United States when they come from a country that has not had the stable democracy that we have. One of the students said to me, she's like, I want to understand this because in my country of origin, we've had, I think it was like 17 constitutions in my lifetime. And so I think that is maybe a population that we don't think about reaching out to for this work, but they are very interested in it and want to be a part of it. And then all of our students have very strong feelings regarding politics. I would say don't shy away from those, pull them in, and just help them to be refocused on processes and understanding systems.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Donna. And if you are a student leader that is here, I would encourage you to get involved with your student government and have your student government go to that faculty and staff that are running or that are the CVEX. And, encourage them. Let's start a task force. Let's get other departments involved on campus. Let's get the students in here to being able to voice their perspectives and concerns. So I want to thank very much our panelists here. Applause in the chats from everybody. For everybody else that is on this call, thank you so much for showing up. You will receive a end of webinar email. We will go through and give you all of the resources that were mentioned today. We will, give you some updates on what's coming up, in the next couple of weeks. The SSCCC does have some action plans, action plan templates, and other action plans that have been submitted to us. So we have those also, and they're housed on our website. So we'll send you a link to our website to get that. But thank you so much for showing up. Thank you to our Secretary of State's office for being here, and to Calbright and to Sierra College. And I hope you have a wonderful rest of your Thursday. Take care.